Hi, this is Parmesh and this is Akela, but I'm not Thakela. This is Thakela. This is a smiling Kela. And I'm doing 23, 73, God knows how many questions with all of you. क्या क्या करना पड़ता है इस लाइन में डालें?
What's the most misunderstood thing about DI that you wish people just got?
The most misunderstood thing is that it's just about celebrating certain days and that it's, this performative thing that people do. It's actually about structural change. It's not just about celebrating certain days and like having cupcakes and rainbows, for example. There's so much work that goes behind it, or like Women's Day or whatever. But people think it's just about the days.
When did you realize inclusion isn't just a nice to have, but a make or break for organizations?
My actually defining moment came when I went to grad school, to MIT, not the Maharashtra Institute of Technology or Manipal. I mean, it was a wonderful places, and if you've gone there, I love you. But I went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We gave a GRE and like flew far away to go there, and on scholarship. I worked very hard. And I realized there that, the university was kind of waiting for me there, like Jaya Bachchan with an Aarti, like when Shah Rukh lands, in K3G comes from the helicopter. And it was like, welcome, my gay child, welcome. Because all my life in India, I had kind of thought that my gayness is something I had to suppress or hide in order to succeed in college or in the workplace or whatever. But here was an institution that was literally welcoming me with rainbow flags, with queer retreats, with the vice president of the institution funding my film festival. And then I realized that when the institution helps you be the best of who you are, not only did I flourish, right? Because the kind of things I did at MIT made MIT even more world famous than it was. The film festival we did, for example, was on the front page of the BBC. It's consistently #1 in the rankings and so on, right? So I realized that when your organization becomes a bridge towards possibility and not a wall that kind of suppresses you, it's amazing. And then I found that same kind of energy flash forward many years later, so from K3G to Rocky and Rani, when I joined Godrej. And I found that same kind of energy in folks like Nisa, Sumit, and so many others who've said, let's make inclusion this bridge of possibility for everyone.
What's one inclusion buzzword you wish people would stop throwing around until they actually understood it?
I have so many buzzwords, but the one I hate is diversity of thought. Like, I'm like, wow, lol. Like, yeah, it's very nice. We have so many different people. They're all men, but, they have diversity of thought. Like, I want to see diversity of other kinds, right? Many people, people do such kind of excuse-gary, it's ridiculous, which is why we at Godrej are very focused on, what is representation, real numbers in terms of women, in terms of PWD, in terms of LGBTQ. Of course, we want various kinds of diversity, but we actually want to see numbers as well. And not just, or people do conversations and believe it changes. Conversations don't change anything. Like actually hiring people changes things. But anyway, there's lots.
If DEI had a dress code, what would it not include?
DEI by itself is inclusive, so how can we exclude anything? It's come as you are, and we celebrate you as you are. I'm even including you wearing what you're wearing, so you can imagine how inclusive we must be.
With the rise of backlash against inclusion globally, what's your go-to book, show, or film that comforts you or reminds you why this work matters?
Well, go-to book is obviously Queeristan, which if you haven't read, like, what are you on? Which planet are you on? There's so many books now. There's so many films. There's I love Coded Bias on Netflix, which talks about how AI itself, because of just the overwhelming amount of white male engineers who are coding AI, of how biased AI is towards everything else. And there's all these incredible Black women in STEM who are saying, this cannot be the digital future that we want because we're not making the products, and so the data sets aren't including us, and so the algorithms themselves are going to be biased as well. So there's so much now out there that it's actually quite amazing.
What's a pop culture reference, film, fashion, fiction, that explains intersectionality better than any workshop ever could?
Again, there's so many now, but I love Kala, for example, Paranjit's Kala, which was actually quite amazing, which looks at, gender, masculinity, caste, politics in such an interesting way. There's a 2014 film called Pride, which talks about how in England and a bunch of LGBT activists joined hands with minors who were both in a sense, fighting for the same rights. There are so many now. What I also like is that so much of, say, our web series or films now talk about various aspects of inclusion, at least in terms of representation. There are different characters and they're all going on different journeys, within the stories as well. So it's good because it gives people a sense of the complexity.
Which unconscious bias have you personally had to unlearn the hard way?
Well, I was very biased towards straight people, and I'm still working on it. I always thought that straight people were boring. But I'm really working on it, and I realized because, Godrej also has straight people. Some of you might, it's hard to believe, but, they're not all queer here. There are some straight people here. There are some persons without disabilities here. There are some non-women here as well. We're very inclusive. And the more I hang out with all of them, I realize that they're just like the rest of us. They're just human.
What's a cultural moment from the last year that made you feel seen?
A cultural moment last year has got to be the launch of our Pride Fund here at Godrej itself. We at Godrej Industries and Group, thank you, Nisa, thank you, Omar, through the foundation for making this happen. Partnered with Radhika Piramal, Keshav Suri Foundation, and other philanthropists, with the help of Dasra, to launch India's huge, big, dedicated LGBTQIA+ philanthropy fund. We put together many crores every year that we give exclusively to LGBTQIA+ NGOs in India that are doing such amazing work across the length and breadth of our country, across urban and rural India. So it just made me feel so grateful that at a time in the world where, say, in parts of the US, for example, or in other parts of the world, rights are not advancing clearly, we in India are actually thinking of queer futures, queer possibilities, and so much more. It made me very happy and very proud to be a Godrejite.
What's one line from the Godrej policy you're especially proud of?
Well, I love all our policies. They're actually amazing. Go read them. They're all on our website, godrejdlab.com. Read our group diversity and inclusion statement. It's actually quite beautiful. But Nisa contributed one line to that, which said, we are only as good as what we do next, which I think is so key because it shows that to us as a group, it's always a work in progress and we're always striving to be better.
What's a Godrej initiative that started off niche but is now shaping culture in a big way?
I think everything, so much of what we're doing in the DI space is shaping culture. If you look at, whether it is, say, the new factory in Tamil Nadu, where we started on day one with 50% women, 5% PWD and LGBTQ, it's really shaping how people think of manufacturing in the country. Whether you look at some of our offices, Godrej Capital, for example, is now building entire new offices which are completely accessible, really reimagining what offices should look like. Whether you look at products and services that we're doing across our group companies as well, whether in homes, whether in that. If you look at Godrej Properties, the fact that every construction site now has sign language interpreters for our PWD colleagues, has cafes run by, say, trans people and so on, it's actually quite amazing. The LGBTQIA+ focus over the years has actually really been quite amazing, along with everything else. And LGBTQI, for example, we've gone from being a company which has inclusive policies to a company which is now running a queer publishing house, which is doing a Pride Fund, which is going to run a queer fellowship program. It's actually quite amazing. And our lab is now invited to advise, whether it's the Prime Minister's chief scientific officer, on how to increase women in STEM. So we're not just shaping culture, but we're also shaping policy at larger levels as well. So it's great fun. And it's also, I think it shows the future, that how, the future of inclusion in India and the world is going to be when all these various stakeholders come together, whether it's us as a corporate, whether it's NGOs, whether it is state and the national government, whether it is international bodies like the UN. For example, in 2018, we at Godrej hosted the UN standards for LGBT inclusion globally. So I think this is all part of, when we have to create a better world, we all have to kind of come together and say, how is it going to happen? And I'm really proud that we at Godrej we have our flag firmly planted in the ground, and we're helping lead the way.
What's more powerful in a boardroom, data or lived experience?
I think both data and lived experiences are very powerful. Data is for the head, and lived experience and stories are for the heart, which is why at Godrej, whether it's through our DEI lab or all our group companies, we use both. Of course, numbers are important and we track numbers very, very carefully, but we also surround all our data with great storytelling. So if you've not heard the India Included podcast hosted by guess who? Me. You should. If you've not seen our amazing videos, you should. If you've not gone online and seen our, Insta Reels, our YouTube Shorts, fabulous LinkedIn posts, and just experienced us at, say, physical events all over the country, you should, because it's these. We have sections like Spotlight where we highlight work of other companies. We have Godrej One Project where we highlight our own successes. And it's these stories that actually help shift the narrative, that help people believe into what is actually possible, what happens when you become inclusive. So both matter in the boardroom and in real life.
How do digital systems like AI tools, ATS, or performance software accidentally amplify bias, and what should we watch out for?
I think we're in a very dangerous space because the people who make so much of the technology tend to be heterosexual, able-bodied men, and this is universal all over the world. If you look at just the engineers who are working in these fields, if it's in America, it's heterosexual, white, able-bodied men. In India, it's upper caste, able-bodied men, and so on. And so when people are designing these systems with all these biases, the data sets that go into it, I mean, what is AI, right? AI can only serve you what comes out of these data sets. And what is going to these data sets is so uninformed by the world at large, the answers that are going to come out are going to be quite limiting. So I'm very afraid that we are not making, technology inclusive enough to actually manage the diversity. So I'm actually afraid that it's going to lead to, a lot of misinformation and so much lack of what is actually happening in the real world. But these are structural things. Like how do you get more engineers to make products? You have to have more, women in college, in school, in STEM. So these are structural things. But yeah, these are some things that keep me up at night. But then I have dark chocolate, which helps.
What's one invisible form of exclusion that still goes unnoticed in most offices?
So many forms of exclusion go unnoticed, whether it's casteism, whether it's classism, whether it is many people don't share the fact that they have a disability. So whether it's assuming things about people, whether it's heteronormativity, I mean, you can go on and on. Less at Godrej because we're like nicer than most places and we're constantly trying, but it happens everywhere, which is why all of us have to be constantly on this journey and vigilant.
What's a mistake companies make when they try to address multiple identities in a one size fits all way?
I think it's new for companies too. Ideas of intersectionality and all are very new for companies. For companies, it's hard because you make policies for the average, for the mean, and everyone is different. So I think companies are also trying very hard to kind of broad base and be inclusive in how they design policies as well. But this is where we all have to step in and help our companies be better.
How do you hold people accountable for non inclusive behavior without pushing them into shame or defensiveness?
I think there's a place for everything. So there is also a place for like making people feel ashamed, making people feel whatever. We have to use the entire range of emotions, inside out, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Every emotion has its need and purpose. But I think I've realized in my, I'm only 20, so in my short life, that calling people in is better than calling people out for their mistakes. So you call them in with humor, you call them in with love, you say, maybe you didn't mean that, or maybe you don't know the meaning of that. And like, it's easier than say embarrassing them or scolding them or whatever. But I'm good at scolding also. But love goes a long way.
What's the one thing the new generation has done around DEI that gives you hope?
Oh, I'm just so lucky that I get to live and work with like young people today. Mona El Tahawi, the Egyptian American feminist author who was here at Godrej recently at one of our GLFs, cited someone else when she said that, today people don't want crumbs, they want the whole cake. And I like that about young people today. They're not happy with crumbs, right? Say my generation of people, I'm not really 20. You knew that. I'm 49 when you're seeing this. We're very happy with small changes, incremental changes. But young people today, no, they just want a better world and they want it now. And they are not okay with like marginal incremental changes. And I love that about them. They give me hope. They give me inspiration. They help me be more fierce. They laugh at my bad jokes. It's amazing.
What's your litmus test for whether a DEI campaign is working?
So I don't like the idea of DI campaigns because I think campaigns are like short term and like transactional. I believe in structural change. But I mean, we measure everything, right? For me, it's, have the numbers shifted, right? I mean, I just like measuring hard numbers, right? Has this led to more jobs being created? Has this led to better products? Has this led to, different kinds of innovation? For me, these are the things that we measure in everything that we do. And has it shifted the culture in a significant way? Has it led to policy change? So, I mean, I look at outcomes. And if outcomes have been met, then I know that something has been successful. And if it's just, if outcomes are not being met, then we work harder.
What's a risk you're glad you took in the inclusion space, even when you weren't sure it would land?
I think everything we've done with the DEI Lab is a risk. This combination of internal danda and external carrot is a risk of something which measures and pushes companies internally, but is an advocacy and kind of media platform for the world at large. I mean, our lab itself is a hybrid kind of beast, right? We're doing annual reports, we are doing meetings, we're helping change policies, but we're also collaborating with universities and producing reports. We're doing podcasts, we're doing all these things. So the fact that this all would come together and mean something and would lead to some shift was a big risk. It worked. There's no other company that I know of in India or the world that does this unique set of things, and it's working. So maybe others should follow. And even in the things that we do internally, for example, 2 years ago, we mandated that anyone who's above vice president, anyone who's in a senior leadership role at Godrej has to compulsorily take 15% of the goals as people and planet goals. So inclusion and sustainability. We didn't do one big group discussion and say, what do you think? We just enforced it on people. Was it a risk? Of course. Has it helped shift numbers like ridiculously crazy? So we at Godrej, we take these things. We think that something is right. We make bold bets. And I'm just so glad that at least in the DI space, they've all worked out. And I'm very, very happy.
How should we handle mistakes in this space, especially when they come from positions of power?
I think positions of power come with them. They have huge responsibility embedded in them. So I think we have to be very firm. This is why companies have systems and structures in place like POSH and so on, with internal complaint committees and so on. And you have to really, really, really follow the rule of law. And you have to actually set an exemplar that what is good, what is bad. If something is not right, it will not be tolerated, come what may. That's how you set the tone for the rest of the organization, and where good behavior becomes something that is the norm, right? So with firmness.
What's your advice to someone who wants to be an ally but is afraid of getting it wrong?
I would say like allyship is a journey, start anywhere, come with love, share your own journey. The more you share of yourself, the more you'll allow others to be an ally to you so that you can be an ally to others. We all need allies for some aspect of our life, just as we all can be good allies to others. For example, of late, I've become a very good ally to straight people. And it's amazing. Straight people need allies too. It's very hard to be straight in this ever-changing world. So I've become a good ally to them, for example. And as a result, they've become good allies to me, and so on. So I would say just go along. And if you don't know anything, like, ask people from the community who are your friends. They'll take you along on the journey with them as well. But start somewhere. It's good fun.
Which Indian organization outside of Godrej do you think is doing exceptional work on DEI that we can all learn from?
There are so many. And if you want to find who these are, follow the Godrej DEI Lab Spotlight series on our website, listen to India Included, the podcast, or just follow us on socials. We're everywhere, Godrej DEI Lab. Whether it's Biocon Biologics for gender, whether it's Airtel. I mean, Amrita Pada there is doing a great job in improving women's representation. Whether it's a company like Lemon Tree, which is doing incredible work for empowering persons with disabilities, or Nestle in the FMCG space. whether it's groups like the Lalit group of hotels, which have more than 300 now LGBTQ persons with disabilities, acid attack survivors, and more on their rolls. There's actually great work happening on the ground. There are BPOs that are in, smaller towns that are staffed entirely by women. It's a group called, it's an organization called Vindhyas. There's so much good work happening across the length and breadth of our country. It's amazing. And this is what we realized once we've started a lab and once we've gone on this journey, right? There's beautiful work happening. And when we are all kind of coming together and pushing each other, great time.
What's one resource from the DEI Lab you wish more people took full advantage of?
I wish more people went to our website and realized that we have resources like a DI directory, which has like 700 resources right now. I think of any tool that you need, books, videos, PDFs on how you can be more inclusive, resource people. We've spent 2 years in building this for the world at large. And it's with a drop-down searchable menu. So if you want to go on your inclusion journey, just go to our directory, find your resource and start. I mean, we've actually spent years in actually making all of this happen for you, not just if you're at Godrej, but also, so please share this with your friends beyond Godrej as well. We've created this resource for the world because we can compete in the marketplace. We don't want to compete in the inclusion space. We want to take everyone, we want to collaborate and want to push everyone along in the inclusion space. So use it, share with their family and friends, and let's all go on this journey together.
What's one thing you want every person at Godrej to do to be more inclusive?
I want every person at Godrej to realize that this is a unique opportunity you have to work for a company. You're working for a company that is deeply purpose-driven. So even if you are not in HR or in any DI team, DI should be embedded in who you are. It should be in every action of yours. And if you can make every step of yours, if you can look at every action of yours from an inclusive and from an inclusion lens, how amazing will it be for the work that you do, and what a better world we'll be able to create. So you are all change agents in helping make Godrej and the world a better place. So it's a responsibility. Don't take it lightly.